All right, guys, we are entering lesson 2 of topic 2, and this one's going to be a doozy because while integers are all fine and dandy, today we're learning about rational numbers. And rational numbers are a bit more complicated. All right, so let's take a look at this number line. It's the same number line that you saw in the last lesson, and it is integers. So we have my positive whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have my negative whole numbers, -1, -2, -3, -4, and we have my 0 in the middle, okay? So positive whole numbers, negative whole numbers, and 0. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to look beyond these integers, and we're going to talk about these rational numbers. Rational numbers are the fractions and also decimals that are in between the numbers shown. So things like 1.5, things like 3 1/3, things like -5.78. So we're talking about the tick marks that lie in between these integers that can be expressed as fractions. So let's jump right into it, shall we? Okay, let me move on. All right, so here's a picture. This picture shows me the different elevations of different animals. And my job is to use this number line to plot. Remember, AKA put a dot. So put a dot and plot the location of each of the animals. Sounds easy, but it's not. Because my seagull, who's flying above sea level, remember sea level 0, is flying at a positive 3/4 of a yard. I can't just come over here and put a dot on 3/4 because there's no tick mark there. And you can't just estimate. You have to create your tick marks. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to look at this denominator. This denominator is a 4. That means I have to divide my number line into fourths. Okay? Well, I'm going to start by doing something easier first. I'm going to divide it in half. That doesn't look halfway. Let me erase that, shall we? All right, let's try that again. That looks more halfway, okay? So that is 1/2. Now, that only divided my number line into 2 sections. I have this section and this section. Well, remember, I need 4 sections because the seagull is 3 out of 4. So I'm going to put 1 here and I'm going to put 1 here. Now, if you look at this, what I just created is I have 1 section here, 1 section here, 1 section here, and 1 section here. I actually created 4 sections in between 0 and 1. So I'm going to label those tick marks. This is 1 out of 4. This one is 2 out of 4, which we know simplifies 2 1/2. And this is 3 out of 4. This one would be 4 out of 4, which is a whole. So now that I have my tick marks created, I can go back to my seagull. It is the 3rd out of the 4. It's 3/4 the way above 0. And I'm going to label that with an SG for seagull. All right, we got that bad boy done. So now I'm going to go into my negative land. So my dolphin is -1/4. Okay, it's not labeled down here, so I need to do the same thing. The denominator is 4, so I need to break it once again into 4 sections. So I'm going to start with a half because that's easier for me. So there's a -1/2. And then I'm going to divide those ones. Now I have 4 sections, okay? Visualize it with me. I have this section, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I created 4 sections between 0 and -1. So let's label those tick marks. This is 1 section below 0. Woo, my mouse went funky. This is 2 sections out of 4 below 0. Notice I'm putting those negatives because below means negative. This is the 3rd section below 0 out of 4. And this one would be the fourth section, which would make it 4 out of 4, which is a whole. And since it's below, it's negative. All right, now that I have my tick marks, let's plot the dolphin. So it is at negative 1/4. It's going to go right here. And I'm going to put a D for dolphin. It's done. Ooh, sea turtle's easy. -1. I shall put a dot at -1. Let's do ST for sea turtle. And then I have a shark. Well, my shark's a decimal. I don't have decimals on my number line, so I have to use some number sense. -0.5. We should know that -0.5 or 0.5 is the same as a half. So this is the same as -1/2. Now, if you did not know that, your Desmos calculator will change any decimal to a fraction if you just type it in. So my shark is at -1/2, which is right here, and I'm just going to put S for shark. We completed what the problem wanted us to do. We plotted, put dots, the location of the 4 animals shown. And reminder, these are rational numbers they gave me because they include integers, positive and negative whole numbers, as well as those fractions and decimals in between. All right, so let's keep practicing this skill, shall we? All right, so this is an example of the types of questions you're going to have to answer today. So it wants us to plot, remember that means put a dot, these points on the number line shown. Okay, so this is -1 1/4. Negative means it's below 0, which means I have to go backwards to the left. So the whole number tells me to go backwards to -1. And then it says I have to go 1 out of 4 spaces beyond that. Well, here's -1. And then I have to go backwards one more little tick mark. And I'm going to put a dot and label it P. Okay, so I went backwards one whole and then one more section. So let's do R. Well, it gives me -0.75. None of these are decimals. But we should know money. If I have 75 cents, I have 3 out of 4 quarters. It was negative, don't forget your negative sign. AKA, if you don't know this, use your calculator. So now I'm looking for -3/4. Does that have a whole number? No. So I will go to 0. I don't have to travel to any of these whole numbers. I am just going to go backwards because it's negative 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. I went backwards 3 out of the 4 spaces. I'm going to put a dot and I'm going to label it R. And now I'm going to go to my next one. 0.25. Once again, I don't have a fraction, but I know money. If you have 25 cents, you have 1 out of 4 quarters. It is not negative, so it's positive. If it's positive, it means you go forward. You go to the right. Okay? There is no whole number, so I don't travel to any whole numbers. I just start at 0. And I go forward 1 of the tick marks, 1 out of 4. And its name is Q. We have one more to plot. This is a negative, so I have to go backwards. It does not have a whole number, so I start at 0. And I am just going to go backwards 1 out of the 4 spaces. Boop. And I am going to put an S. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look at these rational numbers, fractions and decimals, and you have to figure out where they go on a number line. But you can do it. I know you can. The last skill you have to have is when you look at a number line and they've already plotted it for you. Your job is to decide the exact location. So they want me to find the location of A. All right, well, here's A. You're going to start at 0. This is always my starting point. To get to A, I went backwards. So if I'm going backwards, is that positive or negative? It's negative. I don't go past any whole numbers, and so I'm just going to count the spaces. I went back 1, 2. So I went back 2 spaces. Out of, figure out how many spaces are in between the 2 whole numbers. It was out of 1, 2, 3, 4. So the answer is negative 2/4. That simplifies to negative 1/2, which you probably noticed that A was halfway between 0 and negative 1. It was negative 1/2. Now let's look at B, okay? B is over here. It is to the right. It's forward. So is that positive or negative? Positive. All right, so always start at 0. That's my starting point. I hop 1, 2, 3. So I went forward 3. Out of, figure out how far it is from 0 to your whole number. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is 3/4. So B is a positive 3/4 because it's 3 out of the 4 spaces. Last one is C. Now, if I start at 0 and I have to get to C, I'm going backwards. So is that positive or negative? Negative. Now, C is way back there. To get to C, I have to go all the way to negative 1. Then I have little bunny hops. So I'm starting with negative 1, and let's see how far past that it goes. 1, 2, 3. So it is negative 1 and 3. Any guesses on the denominator? It's going to be 4. All of the denominators here are 4 because the number line is broken into fourths. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 sections in between the holes. So negative 1 and 3/4. So for this lesson, you have to be able to identify rational numbers. They're those in-betweens. They include all the integers as well as the fractions and decimals in between. You need to be able to plot them on a number line. You also need to be able to look at a number line and tell me the location. It's not all sunshine and roses anymore, is it? And that is the end.